Hey there, this is Dave from The Greg and Dave Show. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
This is Jordan Butler, host of Head Over Heels, here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Head Over Heels, where we talk about everything the Miss America organization. A new show comes out bi-monthly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Head Over Heels. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
If they go out and wipe the floor with the Texans, I might buy in.
The insightful interviews.
Whitney McIntosh, SB Nation.
I was more impressed with John Carlo, especially when you consider Aaron Judge's all-star squad.
The hottest takes.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley had a great game against Iowa, but he hasn't done much.
Can all be found on Press Row. Here's your host.
It's clearly time for a change. It's only a matter of time before it happens.
Christian Heimel.
Oh man, you could just see it coming. You knew there was going to be one weekend like this where everything just went out the window. Everything we thought we knew, everything we were hoping for, all just went out the window. And it happened this past weekend in college football as a big-time shakeup in the college football playoff rankings. Welcome on Press Row. I'm Christian Heimel. So happy to have you guys here, a part of us on the Public House Media Network. Don't forget, subscribe, rate, review, find us all over the place on Spreaker.com, Stitcher.com, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, as well as our website, thephmedia.com. You can also check out a number of other great podcasts on thephmedia.com. Want to get in touch with the show? You can do that. As always, we appreciate you guys sending in your questions each week. We'll get to those a little bit later in the show. You can email us, pressrowphm@gmail.com. You could also tweet us or Instagram at pressrowphm and find us on Facebook at Press Row Podcast Public House Media, one of the fastest growing podcasts out there right now, not only on social media, but overall as well. We brought it up, the college football playoff rankings, whether you agree with them or not, a huge shakeup. This is exactly what I expected it to be, and I thought it was going to be, after the weekend at least, Alabama, Clemson, Miami, and Oklahoma, your top four in that order. Georgia losing. What surprises me about Georgia losing and losing to Auburn is the fact that I did not expect Georgia to drop all the way to 7. I did not expect Notre Dame to drop all the way to 8. I would have maybe expected Auburn at 7, Notre Dame at 6 potentially, and maybe Georgia would have stayed there at 5. But the committee clearly is now, because of Wisconsin's win over Iowa, remaining undefeated and finally beating a ranked team, putting them there at number 5, and that seems to make the most logical sense. I don't think Wisconsin is a top 4 team. I don't find them as a playoff team. I don't care that they're undefeated. Other than Iowa, they haven't beaten anybody yet. So if Wisconsin can go and they can make their way and win the Big Ten championship and stay undefeated, then absolutely they are going to be in the playoff, and they deserve to be in the playoff. But when you look at who they've played, Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, and they struggled against Purdue. But they've got Michigan coming up at home, which could be another big win for them, and then at Minnesota, and then the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. So, listen, I mean, you can say all you want about Wisconsin being undefeated. They've played 2 ranked teams. They will play 2 ranked teams. If they're both wins, they're both at home. And when you look at the teams ahead of them in the college football playoff ranking, Oklahoma, Miami, Clemson, and Alabama, they've beaten more ranked teams. They've beaten better ranked teams. And I know a lot of folks want to say Miami undefeated should be ahead of Clemson, but you heard the playoff committee mention it, and they're absolutely right. Miami hasn't gone on the road and beaten anybody. Clemson, on the other hand, has done that. You look at Clemson, and they've gone on the road and beaten Louisville. They've gone on the road, beaten Virginia Tech, beaten North Carolina State. All those games on the road and against ranked opponents. So, you know, I mean, that to me right there proves they're better than Miami right now. And Miami is a team that, when you look at who they've played, that Florida State game isn't what it is anymore, obviously because of the injury to Francois, but they host Virginia Tech and win. Yeah, they hosted Notre Dame and blew the doors off Notre Dame. Absolutely embarrassing showing by the Irish. Those are home games. And much like Wisconsin, when you go on the road and beat people, that is the biggest thing. So until Miami beats Clemson, and if they beat Clemson in the ACC championship game, which I think they will, then they should be ahead of them. But here's how the College Football Playoff Committee thinks about this. It's, did you go out of conference and play big-name teams? Did you go on the road and play big-name teams? Did you take care of business in your conference? And that's why I think Oklahoma is going to remain there, because they're going to take care of business in their conference. They're going to win the Big 12. The Pac-12 has nobody there. USC at 11, I don't think they have. The only way USC, I think, gets in is if Oklahoma loses a couple more games and Wisconsin loses 2 games. But then you need Alabama to beat Auburn, and then beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but the Pac-12 isn't there. The Big 10, unless Wisconsin goes undefeated, isn't there in the college football playoff. Auburn, I think, is the interesting team here. Auburn is a squad that, when you look at their resume at 8-2, you look at who they've beaten. Yes, there was their loss to Clemson, a loss to LSU doesn't help, but those are both on the road against good teams. But beating the number 1 team in the country, beating Mississippi State, granted both of those games at home, the big one is going to be Alabama. And if they beat Alabama and they can get potentially, a loss, maybe Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, who knows? I mean, that could be really interesting. So there's still a lot to be decided, a lot going on. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks. These next 2 weeks are big. And you look at it this weekend, there are some huge games this weekend as it comes down to the top 25. The biggest ones that I look at are obviously Wisconsin hosting Michigan, if they can remain undefeated. And then you go down and you see exactly what some of these other schools can do. If Oklahoma should take care of business against Kansas, they most likely will there. And then obviously if Miami can continue to do what they're doing. If Miami continues what they're doing, they're going to be interesting. I like them. I really do think they win the ACC championship. If I had to choose right now, I honestly think the top 4, the 4 teams in the playoff, are going to be Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. Just because I think Wisconsin does go and beat Ohio State. But we'll see exactly what happens. There's still a lot to be decided. And by the way, like I've told you weeks and weeks and weeks, week in and week out, he proved it again. He will prove it again this weekend against Kansas. Baker Mayfield is the Heisman Trophy winner, in my opinion. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So, going to be a lot of excitement going on in college football. This is what I love about it. There's so much stuff going on, and so many things that change just minute to minute on a Saturday. This is one of the things, and I wrote about this for Ming Magazine, and you guys can check it out at mingmag.com. The college football is just so much better than the NFL because there's so much difference going on. We talked a couple of weeks ago with Jay Busby about parity in the NFL, if this is a good or a bad thing. This isn't parity. This is just a lot of bad teams. And in college football, there are a lot of really good, really exciting teams. Guys like Baker Mayfield are so exciting to watch. Saquon Barkley, Bryce Love, Mason Rudolph as well. There are just so many exciting guys to just sit back and watch. So if you're not watching college football on Saturdays, then I really do not know what you are doing with your life. You need to check it out, and you need to have some fun. Not only is it fun to watch college football, but it's a lot of fun to watch college basketball. Jaden Daly of Daly Dose of Hoops is going to join us in a little bit to discuss the college basketball season. A couple of big games earlier this week that I really thought we saw a Final Four preview this week in the Champions Classic when you had Duke, Michigan State, and Kentucky, Kansas. So we'll touch on that as well as all of the off-the-court issues that are going on in college basketball and if the sport can really kind of survive it by finally getting back to playing. We'll also take your questions, touch on the NFL, MLB, NBA, all that fun stuff coming up in just a little bit on Press Row.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops, going to be joining us here just a little bit coming up on Press Row. Want to touch on some of the big things in the NFL and in the NBA. A lot of interesting, fun stuff going on here. You look at it, and you look at the NFL more specifically here. We talked about it with Jay Busby last week. I mean, Philadelphia is definitely the team to beat, and obviously off the bye week, I think we saw a couple of teams really surprise us. I mean, Carolina came out and played tremendous on Monday night with that big victory there over Miami. But you look at some of these other teams, and LA, Los Angeles, the Rams have been playing so good so far this year. I mean, 7-2 atop the NFC West. They've won 4 in a row, but you look at their games, they're blowing people out. 33-0 over the Cardinals, 46-9 over the Colts on opening day, 51-17 over the Giants, 33-7 against the Texans. These things, this team is playing so incredibly well. Jared Goff is really turning into one of the best we're seeing right now. They lead the league in points per game at just under 33. They're third in the league in terms of points allowed, just 18 points allowed a game. They might be the team that really challenges Philly for the NFC. But the other part is, I mean, New Orleans is playing really well. They've won 7 straight after starting out 0-2. Think about that. They've won 7 in a row, the Saints. They just set a franchise record for rushing touchdowns in a game with 6 over the weekend but against Buffalo. But more importantly, and this is what's really important to note about the Saints, over the last few years and when they've been really good, they've had great home records and subpar, maybe 500 road records. So far this year on the road, they're 4-1. That's what makes the Saints interesting to me this year. They've won 7 in a row, as we mentioned, 4-1 on the road with wins at division rival Carolina, wins against the Packers, wins against the Bills. The Packers back when they still had Aaron Rodgers. The Bills, those are 4 of their wins. And it's really impressive to watch because you see them and what they're doing to some of these teams. 30 points a game, third most. They're just over 18 points allowed a game. Coming up the rest of the year for them, this week's going to be interesting because they've got the Redskins at home, but then the really important one is next weekend. Next weekend, when it's week 12 and they go to Los Angeles, that to me is a huge game for this squad. They've still got the Falcons twice, the Buccaneers on the road to close out the season, but the Saints are a team that is going to be interesting to watch simply because they've changed up so much. They've got new scheme defensively. Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator has been great, and it's been just a real change in New Orleans. And I love Drew Brees. When Mark Ingram decides he wants to run the football well, he's incredible. And the Saints are just one of those squads that I'm so excited to watch. I'm so glad that they're good again because I think it's great when New Orleans is talented. I think it's great for football when teams... New Orleans isn't a big market squad, but they've got such a passionate fan base. If you've ever been to New Orleans or been to a Saints game, you know how passionate they are. So it's surprising to look at when we talk with Jay Busby about parity, and we talk about a lot of mediocre or bad teams. The Vikings are great. The Eagles are very good. The Saints are very good. The Rams are good. Even the Panthers, despite being up and down every now and again, they're still a good team. And they're going to get Greg Olsen back. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I'm kind of excited about that. And speaking of the Vikings, I think they did one of the best things possible in keeping Case Keenum as the starter. I mean, look, I understand that it's not exactly the... Case Keenum isn't the best quarterback as opposed to Teddy Bridgewater. But you know what? Teddy Bridgewater, after a dislocated knee and a torn ACL, just to get on the sideline is tremendous. It really is for him. And it's great for him. So happy. But for this team, for Minnesota, you're 2 games up in the division. You've won 5 in a row with Case Keenum. Aaron Rodgers might not be coming back at all this year. You've already beaten the Lions. You do have that game against the Lions still coming up. where you have to win to obviously have the tiebreaker, but you're 2 games up on Detroit right now. It's the right move, I think, to have Case Keenum there, just because he's got chemistry with that line, he's got chemistry with that team, and Keenum has been very, very good this year, playing above his head, admittedly, and he says that he competes for his job every single day because he doesn't know if he's going to be starting, especially when Bridgewater comes back. But Teddy, I really just feel, even though Bridgewater's a more mobile quarterback, even though he's got that playmaking ability that you just want on the field, Case Keenum right now is the smart move. He's got everything right. He's got the chemistry. He's got the respect of the locker room, and that's the way that the Vikings need to go, and I'm glad that they're doing it. I really am. It's a smart move for them. So the NFC is definitely interesting. It kind of surprises me when I look at these standings and I see Minnesota, New Orleans, Los Angeles all at 7-2, and right there kind of making things fun in the NFC. So as much as I think the Eagles are still the favorite in the NFC and it's their conference to lose, there are going to be some squads that have some things to say about that. So we'll see exactly what comes of it here the next couple of weeks. In the AFC, meanwhile, the Patriots, to me, just still seem like the runaway in the AFC, just because, and here's why. Hear me out here. Yeah, the Titans have won 4 straight, and they had a very good comeback there this past weekend to be able to win that at the buzzer, basically, against Cincinnati, and avoid overtime. But with the Titans and the Jaguars, who have won 3 straight, the Jags, to me, aren't a mature enough team because, number one, look at what they've had the last 2 weeks. Jalen Ramsey getting into a cage fighting match, basically, with A.J. Green, and then Marquise Lee with that idiotic taunting penalty at the 1-yard line, which almost cost him the game. Blake Bortles isn't a playoff caliber quarterback, so I don't think Jacksonville, they may make the playoffs. They're not going to win a playoff game, though. The Chiefs are starting to come back down to earth after that 5-0 start. They've lost 3 of their last 4. The Patriots, to me, just seem like the runaway just because of what they're doing. They're playing so well. Everybody's starting to click. That defense is finally coming back around. They've won 5 in a row now. And the Steelers don't really concern me, even though they are 7-2. Here's why this, and 5-1 on the road, by the way. The Steelers are a great road team. Here's what's the difficult part. They play down to their opponents. There is no reason why they should be. They had to win by 5 against Detroit. They had to win by 3 against Indianapolis. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the best quarterback, wide receiver, running back trio in football. Maybe the best quarterback, wide receiver, running back trio since Aikman, Irvin, and Smith. That's how talented Roethlisberger, Bell, and Antonio Brown are. But Juju Smith-Schuster adds to that. Martavis Bryant, when he's not complaining about not getting the ball thrown to him, adds to that. This is a team that should be doing what the Los Angeles Rams do. They should be blowing people out. And they're not. They play down to their opponents. They had a 3-point win on opening day at Cleveland. A team that is still yet to win a game this year. And then they go out and they destroy Minnesota. They lose to the Bears. They get blown out by the Jaguars. And then they come back and beat the Chiefs, who were 5-0 at the time on the road. This is why I can't really get behind Pittsburgh yet. As good as they're playing, they're very inconsistent. They play down to their opponents. And Mike Tomlin's going to have to find a way to change that. He's going to have to. So we'll see what happens with it. But, I mean, looking this weekend in the NFL, Thursday night, tonight's a huge one. Does Pittsburgh play down to Tennessee? I really do think they should maybe not demolish Tennessee, but it shouldn't be that close of a game. So, I don't understand it. Pittsburgh can show a lot to me tonight. Tennessee can show a lot to me tonight, because if Tennessee goes on the road and beats up on a Pittsburgh squad, that's going to be impressive to watch. New Orleans hosting the Redskins is going to be a big one. Minnesota hosting the Rams. That's going to be a true testament of both of those teams. The Monday night game doesn't really intrigue me that much with it being Atlanta and Seattle, just because I think Atlanta has gone so far by the wayside now that Super Bowl hangover is more than real. It is killing them. And then the question, of course, will be with Dallas. And if Dallas can survive again without Zeke Elliott, but they've got Philadelphia coming to town, and they're going to get hurt by the Eagles. They're going to get steamrolled because they don't know how to handle not having Ezekiel Elliott, which to me is a little strange when you've still got the best offensive line in football that you don't continue doing what got you there. You may not have Elliott anymore, but why not keep running the football? I don't understand that. So, interesting week in the NFL, that's for sure. Again, I mean, the ones that I'm really watching are the tonight's game, Tennessee-Pittsburgh, Los Angeles at Minnesota, Washington at New Orleans will be interesting. Those are the three big ones that I'm looking at just because I want to know who's going to show me what. Who is going to show me what tonight? Whether it be Tennessee and DeMarco Murray, Marcus Mariota, Delaney Walker. Is it going to be the Steelers actually doing what they're supposed to do, and that is playing tremendous football and running away with a game at some point? So, I mean, we'll see exactly how that all goes down tonight. And then, of course, if the Rams go into Minnesota and blow them out, you're going to see a couple of things. Number one, you're going to see a lot of Rams favorites for the NFC to go to the Super Bowl things, and then you're also going to see Teddy Bridgewater back, even though I still think they've made the right move by sticking with Case Keenum. So enjoy the football, guys. We've got a lot more to discuss here coming up on the show. We've got your questions as well as Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops. We're going to touch on some college basketball stuff, preview the college basketball season, recap a couple of big games that have already happened, and see if the sport can survive some of these off-the-court issues that have been had, plus why the Celtics might not just be the best team in the East, but the best team in the NBA. It's all coming up.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Strange to think after all this waiting that we are just a few short months away from the Final Four in San Antonio coming up March 31st and April 2nd. Jaden Daly of Daly Dose of Hoops joins us now to kind of preview the college basketball season. We've already had a couple of big games, but Jaden, that's kind of what it feels like. It's strange to think that there's so much going to happen here after so long just waiting.
That's usually how it is, Christian. It's 6 months of waiting and 5 months of nonstop action, and you know as well as I do we wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, definitely not, Jaden. And I want to touch on some things that happened preseason before we even get to the actual games. The off-the-court issues that college basketball has faced these last 2 months, whether it be the recruiting scandal, the apparent demise of Rick Pitino's coaching career, or the shoplifting issue in China with UCLA and freshman LiAngelo Ball and a couple of others. These issues, can they go away? Will they go away now that actual basketball is being played again?
I don't think they truly will go away. I think ultimately it's going to be, the white elephant in the room that nobody really talks about, but is there and is impossible to ignore, especially with the FBI investigation and the scandal that, as you mentioned, hit Louisville, hit Arizona with Brooke Richardson, who has been one of Sean Miller's assistants for the last few years. There's also the reports that Jim Larinaga at Miami is implicated as well, and Miami looks to be a top 3 or 4 team in the ACC. So you have Miami and Louisville out of the same conference, which is regarded as, if not the best conference in college basketball, and definitely one of the top 2 or 3 conferences in the nation. So it's not really something that will go away quickly or be, concealed as much, even with 5 months of games. And regarding the shoplifting incident in UCLA with their trip to China, they're back in the United States. They're back on campus, but what surprised me was that LeVar Ball really didn't make a bigger scene and a bigger deal of the whole incident. That really shocked me, especially considering that his son was part of it, and given his antics in the past with Alonzo and now LiAngelo and LaMelo, you would figure that would have got a higher profile than it did. all in all, Christian, I don't think it goes away, but maybe it'll be downplayed for a little while. It'll still be there at the end of the day.
I want to touch on Louisville more specifically here because with Rick Pitino gone, Tom Jurich gone, Dave Padgett and a brand new coaching staff, a team that many can consider a dark horse for a national championship despite being ranked 16th, does Dave Padgett have enough? Can he do enough where at the end of this season he has that interim tag removed?
Well, especially since Louisville entered the season as a preseason top 25 team, and they still have talent, the likes of Daniel Dell, like Jordan Noir, the freshman that came in before Brian Bowen, and the controversy surrounding his recruitment. Grace Baldwin is one of the holdovers from last year's team as well. Louisville definitely has the pieces to make a run, and if they do finish in the top 25, David Padgett is a candidate to have the interim tag removed. I think ultimately it's going to come down to who's on the market at the end of the year. If they can convince a guy like Greg Marshall or Chris Mack or maybe even Tom Crean with a year on the sidelines after he was bounced from Indiana, if they can get somebody to make a move, then it'll be interesting to see. But if Louisville finishes in the top 25 and gets into a postseason, you got to make the argument to keep the status quo and roll with a young coach who will have proven that he can not only win in the ACC and in one of the tougher college basketball environments, but maybe one that has the pieces to win long term.
Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops, joining us here on Press Row. The road to the Final Four has officially begun, but Jaden, I feel like we already saw the Final Four on Tuesday night when you had Michigan State and Duke, and then Kentucky and Kansas playing. Are those four teams four of the best? I know a lot of people like Arizona, but it feels to me like we saw the Final Four in the Champions Classic.
Well, I think those four teams that were in the Champions Classic, as you mentioned, Michigan State and Duke, and then Kentucky and Kansas, they'll all be in the Elite Eight, I think, ultimately. And you still have a couple of Final Four contenders. Arizona, once Raleigh Alkins is back and they get healthy, is a team that can really do some damage in the Pac-12. And people are talking about North Carolina being under the radar, having won the national championship, but they lose a lot. Lost Justin Jackson, lost Isaiah Hicks and Kennedy Meeks, but they still have Joel Berry II when he returns from injury. Theo Pinson is one of the better floor spacers in Division I. Carolina has pieces to really make a run. I was very impressed by Luke Bay going for 26 and 10 against Northern Iowa in his first game of the season. Maybe he'll be more than just a stretch four that can come off a pick and pop and shoot a three. If Roy Williams can get mileage out of him and Garrison Brooks, I think Carolina can get to a third straight Final Four as well.
Mentioned the Champions Classic, Jaden, and it's interesting to see, as much as I kind of despise the guy, I mean, a lot of my Duke bias there, Grayson Allen and his antics, but as a senior, he had a career-high 37 points against Michigan State and really put up an incredible performance.
Well, my lack of love and appreciation for Grayson Allen is right up there with yours. I'll give you that much, but yeah, 37 points against the number 2 team in the nation and presumably the biggest preseason threat for Duke. What really impressed me was that they did this all without Marvin Bagley, the freshman who only played 10 minutes before leaving due to injury. That only shows you how deep and how talented this Duke team is. Mike Krzyzewski has proven he can reload every year, getting the one-and-dones with the USA basketball connection. This might be his best team yet, and to get 37 from Allen, outdueling Miles Bridges, who in his own right, as you mentioned, is a Wooden Award contender. Future is bright in Durham. That's really all you can take away from it. Not to be outdone by Michigan State. It's going to be a fun race and maybe a game that should be replayed again in April.
Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops, joining us here on Press Row. And Jaden, last thing for you, we talked about a lot of things leading up to the Final Four, but what are some of the biggest storylines the rest of the way here in college basketball?
Well, you mentioned Duke and possibly going undefeated with the firepower that they have, how Louisville recovers from the scandal, how teams like Arizona and Miami that were mildly hit or mildly implicated, see how they can do. I'm interested in maybe a mid-major like a Gonzaga or, as you mentioned, the St. Mary's making a run after last year. Mid-major got to the title game. The Big East is probably stronger than it's ever been since the restructuring in 2013. I expect 5 teams, maybe even 6, to get into the tournament, and possibly 3 in Villanova, Seton Hall, and Xavier to be second weekend NCAA tournament teams. Seton Hall has the senior class that is looking to make a run and get one final exclamation point on their legacies: Angel Delgado, Kadeen Carrington, Desi Rodriguez. And Villanova is Villanova. You see how seamless the transition is for Jay Wright and company every year. Jalen Brunson was a preseason player of the year, and he's a guy that can really make an impact on the national stage as well.
Jaden, we appreciate the time, bud. Good luck, and enjoy the rest of the season here.
No doubt, Christian. Same to you.
It's Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops. You can catch him online or on Twitter. Find him DALY, Daly Dose of Hoops. Appreciate his insight there. Listen, I mean, this is what I love about college basketball. It's similar to college football. As soon as you tip it up, almost anybody can do anything. So I was really impressed with the way Grayson Allen and Duke played, especially without Marvin Bagley the other night at the Champions Classic. Really liked the way Kansas played. I thought Bill Self had that team coached up pretty well to go against Kentucky. The entire time I'm watching that game, I just couldn't help but think about how good Kentucky would be this year if guys like Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox had actually stuck around. That just would have been insane to think about how talented this team would be. But we mentioned the off-the-court issues, and I really do wonder what's going to happen there at Louisville. I don't know if Dave Padgett sticks around. I love the idea of Tom Crean. I personally think that Louisville needs to go fully and far away from the Rick Pitino coaching tree. Dave Padgett had been with him for a few years, so we will we'll see what happens. But I don't know why. It's just one of those things that I just don't think is actually going to really get solved just this year. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of intrigued by it. I love the idea of Tom Crean, but who knows? It's going to be a fun season. I'm really excited to see what happens with maybe a team like Purdue. I think they could be surprising. The fact that Wichita State ranked 6th in the preseason poll was pretty neat to see. So we'll see what happens. It's a lot of fun when it comes time for college basketball here. And obviously, the unfortunate part is we had some of these off the field issues, and obviously the most recent one is the UCLA shoplifting issue with LiAngelo Ball and 2 other UCLA players shoplifting over in China prior to their game against Georgia Tech. The suspensions, the indefinite suspensions coming down on Wednesday. And listen, I'm sure whatever the actual number ends up being, people are going to be upset, much in the way they were Grayson Allen when he was indefinitely suspended by the team for tripping, and then it turned out to just be 1 game. So charges were dropped. It reached the president, and he made comments about it with the Chinese president. He made tweets about it saying that he should be thanked or whatever it is. But listen, I mean, it's kids, freshmen, 18, 19-year-old. That's the biggest thing. These kids are 18 and 19 years old. They make mistakes. They do. And some of them are more egregious than others. So is an indefinite suspension the right thing? Yeah, but what is indefinite? Is it 1 game? Is it 3 games? Is it the rest of the first semester? Is it, is it a full year? Because here's the thing. These guys in college basketball, and I don't know how talented these players are. Who knows if they're one and dones? I don't think they are. But if they are, you could really damage them for their mistakes, their dumb decisions. So I don't know what it's going to. The suspension means more based off how long the suspension is. If it's 1 game, it doesn't mean anything. If it's 3 games or if it's the first semester, then it means something. I think it should be at least the first semester, just because not only did you put yourself in a really dumb position, you hurt your team, and you broke the law, supposedly, whether the charges were dropped or not. If there's evidence of it and you broke the law, you need to be punished for that. So, just a little bit, we're going to answer your guys' questions. I'm also going to tell you who the best team in the NBA should be, and it's not someone in the West.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Come on. Hey, ladies. Hey, mom.
What's up?
Let's slide.
All right.
Okay. We gonna get it on tonight. You smoke.
I smoke.
Been a fun show so far. Glad to have you guys a part of it. Once again, I mean, you look at what this college basketball season has a chance to be. It's pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot of really good teams out there. I do think, like I mentioned with Jaden, I do think that we saw a Final Four preview on a Tuesday night in the Champions Classic. As much as I can't stand Grayson Allen and Duke in general, he's a talented young man, and as a senior now, maybe he's got a little bit of that senior swag or senior poise, maturity that may make him a pretty quality player in just a few short months as we head up to the NBA draft coming up next summer. I want to take some time now to answer your guys' questions, and we always appreciate you guys however you send them in via email, pressrowphm@gmail.com, finding us on Twitter and Instagram at pressrowphm, or putting us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast Public House Media. Get to a couple of them real quick. Here on Twitter, Drew in New York asking if we think the Giants get the first pick. Do the Browns have it locked up? And is there a tiebreaker if the Browns win a game? And who are the first two picks in the draft? Who do the Giants go for? I mean, listen, there's a lot going on with the Giants. There's a lot going on with and you look at the Giants now after that embarrassing loss on the road to the 49ers where they made C.J. Beathard look like Tom Brady. There's a lot of things that the Giants could do, the Giants should do, and whether they have the first pick in the draft or not, it doesn't matter. What really matters is who they get. Like this is the thing. You look at the mock drafts right now, and some of them see the Giants drafting Sam Darnold at number 3. Listen, the Giants, in my opinion, do not need a quarterback. I've said this on numerous occasions. Yes, you have Eli Manning, and no, he is not playing very well this year. Understand that completely. I get it. And Giants fans are getting a little fed up with him, and they want to see the next guy get drafted. But look, Eli Manning is still under contract for the Giants for a couple more years. There's no point in going out and drafting a guy unless you're going to Aaron Rodgers him and have him sit behind and learn from Eli Manning. But all due respect to Eli and how talented he is, he's not Brett Favre. You don't need to be sitting him behind a guy for 3 years just because. The Giants also have a couple of okay, and we haven't seen them just yet, but a couple of backups in there. So who on earth thinks that the Giants need to be getting a new quarterback and drafting a quarterback this year? You look at the Giants and where they are. Eli Manning at $13 million, his contract, again, he's still on the books for a couple more years. When you look at it, the Giants have Eli under contract 2018, one more year, and then 2019, there's a possible option there for him. But you've got at least one more year, and I don't think any of these quarterbacks, I mean, I love Baker Mayfield. I think he's the Heisman Trophy winner. I've said it multiple times. But I don't think he's the type of quarterback the Giants need. He might be the right type of quarterback because he's mobile, and the Giants clearly need one with no left tackle. But as I'm looking at these mock drafts, the Giants, I don't think, need a quarterback. They can probably wait 1, maybe 2 more years and try to get Jake Fromm, the kid out of Georgia. Maybe Sam Darnold even goes back for a senior season because he's not having that great a time right now. But the Giants, realistically, what I think they need to do is trade down, or don't even trade down. At the number 2 or the number 3 or the number 1 pick, take Quentin Nelson. Take the left guard out of Notre Dame because the Giants need offensive line help. And Jerry Reese has struggled to do that and get offensive line help because Eric Flowers has been an absolute train wreck. So I think the Giants just have to draft Quentin Nelson, maybe get a trade. I've said this multiple times. It's going to be tough to do it now with the injury, But if you can trade Odell Beckham to get a couple of draft picks and maybe get a Bryce Love, or maybe wait till next year and get a Bryce Love, get that type of quarterback, or get the guy that you think should replace Eli Manning. But the Giants need to be going offensive line this year. They have to. They don't need to go get a quarterback because you've got Eli under contract for another $13 million next year. What's the point? You get him some actual help. You draft a lineman. You go out and trade or you sign a free agent running back. Because as much as you may like Orleans Darkwa, he's not the answer. It's the right move. I don't know if there's a tiebreaker for the Giants or the Browns. Right now, they're still slated at number 3 just because prior draft position. But, Drew, it's a tough season for the Giants. I don't think a quarterback is the answer. I really don't. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. When Eli struggles, it's because he's not a mobile quarterback. He's not a scrambler like an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or Cam Newton. He's like his brother. He's like Tom Brady. He's like Mason Rudolph, and this is the biggest knock on Rudolph. He doesn't move in the pocket. So it's one of those things where if the Giants can get a better offensive line to protect Eli, you're going to get a better Eli Manning. On Facebook, Colin in Texas is asking, how much longer does LeBron James have to win 6 rings? He doesn't have much longer, to be 100% honest. And that's why I think this is going to be interesting. As much as people are going to rip him if he does leave Cleveland again. But you look at the Cavaliers right now, they're struggling. You look at where LeBron is in his career. I mean, and this is the thing. He's still fairly young. He's 32 years old. He'll be 33 coming up in December. But you look at him, and he's still playing incredibly well. His minutes per game are up, but the Cavaliers aren't that great. Granted, a very good comeback win against the Knicks, but it is the Knicks that we're talking about here. You look at Cleveland, and they're sitting there right in the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference, but it's still very easy. There's been talk about LeBron leaving for L.A. After this year because he is a free agent, but he's got what, 3 rings? Yeah. And I just don't, I don't know if he can get to 6 anymore. I think 6 has passed him. I really do. Because I don't think there's going to be a team put together that can go out and win those. And unless he goes to Golden State, unless he goes to Oklahoma City, which is built to win now, I don't know if he goes to LA. I don't know why he would want to, because that to me feels like more of a rebuilding than unless he can get Paul George to come with him. But they play the same position. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that's very difficult to try to figure out, and we'll see what happens there with that. I don't know if he can do it. I think 6 championships has surpassed LeBron. He doesn't have the ability to go do that anymore. That being said, he's going to try, obviously, because he's a competitive guy and he knows that the MJ shadow is always going to hang over his head. He knows that. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think he can get to 6 anymore. I think the biggest thing for him is just trying to put up as many big-time numbers as possible. And we'll see. The thing to remember about LeBron, whether you think he's better than Jordan or not, is that he plays a different position. He's got a better skill set, a wider skill set, and it's just one of those things that is going to be up for debate for years. LeBron, to me, is more like Magic Johnson, and Kobe Bryant is more like Michael Jordan. So at some point, we're going to have to stop comparing the two. At some point, we're going to have to stop. And if the people who have always argued that Jordan's got 6 rings, that was their biggest argument, then you know what? You're going to have that forever. So I just don't think LeBron's got it. I don't think he's got enough talent around him. I don't think he will be able to go to a place that will have the talent around him to win 3 more rings and get to 6, potentially 7. But the other part is, he's 3-4 in the finals, and Jordan was 6-0. So there's that. Last question we want to get to here on Instagram. Any teams in the NFL playing for last place, basically tanking? And do we think anything is going to happen before the Major League winter meetings? With regards to the winter meetings, if anything happens, it might be a JD Martinez signing, just because he's the one who's actually, his price tag is out there. We know what it's going to take to get him. He wants $210 million, as well as about a 7-year contract. So that's the big one. If anything happens, I don't think that's going to happen before the winter meetings. Generally, when you get to the winter meetings here in about 3 weeks, which, by the way, I'll be attending and will be coming to you from the winter meetings. We're looking forward to that. That is going to be one of the biggest things that could happen before then. Aside from that, the interesting ones to watch are, again, the qualifying offers. And we talked about this last week with Chris Cotillo. Guys who turn down their qualifying offers can go sign anywhere. And there are a lot of teams that need starting pitching. You look at the Twins. I think they would love to have an opportunity to go after Jake Arrieta or a couple of others. But those are going to be the interesting ones to watch. And then the other big thing that is important to note here is Shohei Ohtani, who, if you haven't heard about him, he's a Japanese two-way player, pitcher, first baseman, big-time bat, big-time arm. The posting fee is going to be up there once he clears and actually does get to the major leagues. There's a posting fee, and then there's a contract fee. So there's a lot going on with Shohei Ohtani. So those are the three things that I would watch for as we get closer to the winter meetings here in a couple of weeks. Obviously, if anything breaks, we're going to discuss it here on the show, and we'll let you guys know and keep you guys up to date with all of that stuff going on. So thank you guys for your questions. As always, you can always submit them again on Instagram or Twitter at PressRowPHM. Email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com, or put it up on Facebook, Press Row Podcast - Public House Media. Back in a bit, we're going to touch on the NBA and why the Celtics may actually be the team to beat here, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in the NBA.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast - Public House Media, or find us on Twitter and Instagram at Press Row PHM. You can also email the program, pressrowphm@gmail.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Final segment here on Press Row. Happy to have you guys here with us. Thanks again for your questions. We're going to transition here to the NBA a little bit because I don't think there's a team getting as much respect as they should. And those of you who know me, you may call me a homer in this, but the Boston Celtics at 13-2, they've won a NBA record 13 straight after starting the season 0-2. The league's best record, better than the Golden State Warriors, better than the Houston Rockets. And they'll meet the Golden State Warriors tonight, which is going to be a huge game for both squads, and that is the Boston Celtics. I don't think they're getting enough respect. You look at the latest power rankings from some outlets, and they still have the Celtics below both the Warriors and the Rockets, of which they have a better record than. Rockets at 11-4, Warriors 11-3. Again, the Celtics and Warriors meeting tonight. But here's why I think the Celtics are the better team and should be, and I think are the best team in the NBA right now. And when you look at the numbers, and I know stats can be misleading, especially in today's NBA, but today's NBA is very offensive-oriented. It's very three-point based. There's very little defense. And the thing that I thought was going to be great when Brad Stevens came on for the Celtics was he's going to bring in the college style. And the college style is more important to defense. It's more, it more showcases the ability to defend the three-point line, get deflections, defend the basketball, rebound the basketball well. And I'm just going to go through numbers for you guys real quick, and taking care of the basketball too. The Celtics lead the league in in fewest turnovers. They don't turn the ball over much, 13.2 times a game. That's the best in the league. They're only forcing 15 turnovers, which isn't that high, but in those two same categories, the Warriors, in terms of forcing turnovers, are 28th. They rank third to last, in terms of turnovers. They turn the ball over 17 times. That's third to last. Only the Lakers and the Sixers have higher turnover numbers than that. From an opponent standpoint in forcing turnovers, the Warriors have at at 14.8, which is less than the Celtics. So the Warriors have a negative turnover margin, while the Celtics have a positive one. That's a huge thing in today's NBA, considering, especially the way the Warriors play, forcing turnovers, get up, take a quick three, that kind of stuff. They don't have that style right now. They don't have that type of defense at the moment. They may get there, but with that negative turnover margin, it's not exactly a good thing for them. The other part is here, the Celtics are the best defensive team in terms of points per game. They're only allowing 94.5 points a game. That's the best in the league. They're only scoring 103, which isn't too great when you consider that the Warriors are a team that is scoring 120 points a game, but the Warriors are also giving up 108 points a game, which is in the bottom 10 in the league in that. Point differential, the Celtics are plus 8, which is second only to the Warriors, who are plus 12. Field goal percentage, Celtics have the best field goal percentage defense at just under 43%. The Warriors are 7th best at 44%. 3-point percentage defense, the Celtics are in the top 4 there. Teams are shooting under 33% from the 3. Golden State is sitting there at 9. I know it's a lot of numbers to kind of digest, and it's kind of hard to look at. Obviously, the Warriors have the best 3-point shooting percentage. They have the best field goal percentage overall. But when you look at the Celtics and you look at the team defense that they play, that is such a huge thing. And then when you have a guy like Kyrie Irving, who takes care of the basketball, is a wizard with the basketball, and can play some solid defense, the way this team is playing, they're going to get a lot of confidence in the East. They really are, especially going up against teams like the Knicks and the Nets. And when they get wins against the Cavaliers, it's going to give them a lot of confidence. Wins against the Wizards, it's going to do a lot for them, to the point where when the playoffs come around, they're going to be a dangerous team. Not just in the Eastern Conference. And I said this once the Kyrie Irving deal happened. I said this when the Gordon Hayward signing happened. They were the best team in the East because they had the best roster. Now that you're starting to see it actually play out, they have one of the best teams in the NBA. Yes, they're ranked in the top 3 from a power ranking standpoint by a lot of outlets, including ESPN, but I still find them to be a little bit better than the Warriors and the Rockets, simply because when it comes down to how they play defense as a team, that is a concept that is not really preached in today's NBA. So it's a little bit different to game plan for. So when the Warriors come into the Garden tonight and the Celtics get set to take on a team that has won multiple championships over the last couple of years, they're going to be ready, and it's going to be an interesting matchup to watch because Steph Curry missed Monday night's game with a right thigh contusion. I'm pretty sure he's going to play tonight. But Kyrie Irving against Steph Curry has always been interesting, and it's the role players. And the fact that the Celtics are doing this without Gordon Hayward makes it even more impressive. And again, that's the type of confidence that they're going to get because they're playing without Gordon Hayward, the guy who was supposed to be the combination to Kyrie that's going to make things so much better. So it's one of those things that I can't wait to see this game tonight. I can't wait to see how they stack up. A lot of folks are going to say, they're going to take it for a grain of salt no matter what happens. But watch the way the Celtics play team defense, because similar to the way the Celtics played last year against Kyrie, now that they have him there as a ball handler, it's going to be that much better. So we'll see exactly what happens. It's going to be interesting. Exciting to see this game and the rest of the season play out. It's the most excited I've been for an NBA season in a long time, and I'm not a huge NBA guy. I love college basketball a heck of a lot more, but this is going to be a lot of fun to watch, and we'll just have to wait and see exactly how it all plays out. But Celtics-Warriors tonight might actually outdraw the NFL game just because I think it's going to be that interesting and that exciting. So we appreciate you guys being a part of the show this week. As always, you can subscribe, rate, review, find us on our website, thephmedia.com. Check out all of the other Public House Media podcasts that are there. Some great folks to check in and see on sometimes a daily basis, sometimes a weekly basis, like us here on Press Row. Subscribe, rate, review. Find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Stitcher.com, and Spreaker.com, one of the fastest growing sports podcasts in the country, and we thank you guys so much for that. Connect with the show on social media. Instagram and Twitter at PressRowPHM. You can find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast - Public House Media. And you can always email us your questions at pressrowphm@gmail.com. Big thanks to Jaden Daly, Daly Dose of Hoops, for joining us talking college basketball earlier on in the show. We appreciate you guys being a part of it. I'm Christian Heimel, and until next week, I'll see you on Press Row.